I have some thoughts about Deadpool, specifically the movies, very specifically the humor in those movies. I watched both films earlier this year for the first time, enjoyed them immensely, but couldn't help but wonder at one thing. Why does Deadpool feel more serious than Marvel movies? Am I the only one who felt this way? I'm continuing as if I didn't. Both Deadpool films are front-to-back comedy, prioritizing humor and genre critique, and featuring a main character whose very existence as a meta-narrative device should invalidate any and all consequences. And yet, I cared. Cared more, in fact, than most comic book superhero films I'd recently seen. Why was that? Why does Deadpool's humor work, where something like Marvel's doesn't? Well, firstly, I think we have to establish the difference between Deadpool the movie and Deadpool the character. Pretty obvious. I mean, that's his whole charm, right? Self-aware character operating independent of his film. The thing about meta-narrative, of course, is that once the two diverge, you need to establish whether the entity that is the character and the entity that is the film work together or against each other. And spoilers, it's almost always the latter. I don't want to conflate the film's universe and the film itself, as the setting is clearly working against our hero in a number of forms, be that throwing goons at him, taking away his handsomeness, or just infesting him with cancer in the first place. TLDR, the world sucks, and he's just a victim of it. A relatable stance we can all get behind, which helps us vote for Wade instead of the world he inhabits. Wade Wilson, that's Deadpool if you didn't know, scores high with audiences on likability because he dominates the three primary categories of amiability. He's competent in his mercenary work, progressive in achieving his own goals, and relatable in worldview, as well as empathetic due to his situation. We like him and therefore want him to triumph over the world. It also means we're more willing to laugh at him. Which brings us to function 1 of Deadpool's humor. It's a coping mechanism. Black comedy, or gallows humor, is a great characterizer which Wade uses to grant himself levity to an otherwise borderline hopeless situation. He's physically atrocious and seeking to reclaim his humanity in a visual and societal sense. He's the monster that's been cast out and wants back in, and he needs Francis to do that. The grim twist of fate in the first film is that Wade's quest is in vain, as the elixir of life he's hunting down never existed in the first place, and he's doomed to forever exist as a freak. Which, when you think about it, kinda makes the first film a tragedy. Wade fails in his primary objective. His humor, used as usual to cope, gives him and the audience the satisfaction of at least having some fun along the path of destruction. But it is a path of destruction. His humor is a weaponized form of bathos, the red-headed stepchild of logic, defined as an amusingly failed attempt at presenting artistic greatness. It's a disappointment of ideals, basically Deadpool's whole purpose, both disappointing his fellow mutants by falling short of heroic X-Men ideals, and the ideals of superheroes in general, and also a literary disappointment in failing to achieve the goal we've spent the whole film pursuing. Bathos is a fundamental appeal of satire, the intended goal of Deadpool the movie. Usually the appearance of pathetic elements in superhero films especially are maligned for creating an anticlimax and undercutting emotional impact. In most modern Marvel films, this is humor for humor's sake. Attempts at reclaiming audience engagement because the writers assume the story they're telling isn't compelling enough to play out without the support of comedic enjoyment. Deadpool, by contrast, uses bathos to undercut the impact of his own tragedy, attempting in his own way to flip the script into feel-good territory by showing it's not all that bad. The films support this idea visually in their fight scenes as well. Deadpool's colorful red stand out in a world of otherwise monotone gray. Secondly, and more amusingly, Deadpool's humor functions to distinguish his place in the universal hierarchy. He jokes about, around, and at hostile forces as an anti-intimidation tactic to leverage against his inherent disadvantage, being just one guy. It's terrifying to face a man with no emotion, but arguably scarier to face the madman who stares at death and laughs. This tactic isn't used strictly against hostiles either, as seen in the arcade with Vanessa in arguing whose childhood was worse.
I was molested.
Me too. Uncle.
Uncles. They took turns.
I watched my own birthday party through the keyhole of a locked closet, which also happens to be
Your
mine.
bedroom. Lucky.
Wade's rebuttals are a ploy for achieving pity, which he ends up losing to his lover. Early Marvel films utilized humor in the same way, comedy as a function to establish their characters' relative power in their world. In the first Captain America, a gag showing Steve's shortness might at first seem overplayed, but as the audience we can appreciate its secondary role in establishing Roger's place in the hierarchy. He doesn't measure up, literally, to being a standard soldier, never mind a super one. Likewise, in Thor, the god of thunder turned mortal is hit with a van not once but twice. Comical, but also a deeply humbling reminder that the Prince of Asgard is now weak enough to die or get hospitalized, just like the rest of us. Contrast that against the goats in Thor Love and Thunder. Low-hanging fruit, I know, but it's there. Not only was the abrasive presentation overdone, but their existence serves no purpose in furthering Thor's character or establishing world building. And finally, wait, I was numbering these. Thirdly, the type of humor Deadpool employs, specifically meta-humor, adds an additional layer of tragedy to his situation. Call this more an observation than a proof, but did you notice that while the film as an entity works in conjunction with Wade, it isn't necessarily on his side? Sure, it obeys his desires in looking towards or away from him, but if we understand the film to be a narrative as well as our audience viewport, then the fact it torments Wade at all in allowing him to end up mutilated and alone, twice, goes to show the story's only interest is in improving his character, whether he's consciously aware of that motive or not. Let's look at it this way. Wade Wilson is functionally invulnerable and keenly aware of the audience, which is to say he's constantly being watched, constantly aware he's being watched, and unable to kill himself out of that situation. What can a guy do when he ends up immortal and omniscient? Barter and perform. Wade's over-the-top presentation isn't just distraction from his woes, it's showmanship for the audience he knows is spectating him. And that's why it works. Deadpool is allowed to crack jokes, break the typical laws of storytelling, even the laws of time, but he can never break out of what he is. A madman in a suit, just trying not to lose anything more. Because he could always lose more. Self-awareness doesn't dictate power, it just lets you know when you've lost it. Films fail to impress when the story itself is in on the joke. Deadpool is a joke, knowingly trapped in a dead end. So he does what anybody would when at the end of their rope. Tie a knot, and hang on. Because if the world won't work with you, at least you can have some fun at its expense. And that is its own kind of victory. Hi, yes, wow, end of the video. While we're being self-aware, yes, this is a video about a bunch of half-baked thoughts made as an excuse to let me rant about Bathos and release in time to make money off the new third film. I wrote this script in 2 days at my day job on a cell phone, so if you made it this far, goodness, I hope you got something out of it. Seriously, thank you all so much for watching. I just wanted to try something different and have some fun with a shotgun production, so enjoy an extra few minutes of my voice. I'll be back with more of the normal stuff lickety-split. In the meantime, I've been Jaro, y'all have been amazing, and I'll see you all on the bright side. God bless.